Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. Today I want to look at my top 10 favorite Game Boy Color games of all time. I recently did one on the original Game Boy. You can go check that video out after this one. I'm going to be not including any of the games that were on that one that got ported over later with a color version, so you won't see like Link's Awakening, DX, or Wario Land 2 here. I'm only going to be focusing on games that are new to the Game Boy Color specifically, or ones that I haven't featured on that list. So with that out of the way, here's a few honorable mentions. I already mentioned those two, Link's Awakening, DX, which is my favorite Game Boy game of all time if you're counting the original one. Wario Land 2 is also on that list. Donkey Kong Country, which is actually a full like remake of the SNES version since the Game Boy Color was more powerful than the original Game Boy. That game was fantastic. You have other things like the Game Watch Gallery 2 and 3, some of the old Dragon Quest games on there. With that out of the way, let's get on to number 10, which is going to be Dragon Warrior 3 or Dragon Quest 3, depending on where you are. But Dragon Warrior 3 is like a reworking of the remake on the Super Nintendo, since Dragon Warrior 3 originally came out on the Super Famicom. Or on the original Famicom, excuse me, and then they had like an upgraded version, like a remake on the Super Famicom system, and then they made a port of that on the Game Boy Color. Wherever the logic takes us, Dragon Warrior 3 works exceptionally well on the go. It is a lot of fun. This is probably like top 3 Dragon Quest games in the entire franchise. It's a very iconic character itself. Dragon Quest 3 Hero especially is represented in Smash still. Probably the best art by Akira Toriyama, in my opinion, for the Dragon Quest characters. This game is really fun. It's a big, beefy RPG, and the fact that they got it onto the Game Boy Color is really astonishing. It works really, really well. Number 9 is going to be Mario Tennis. Now, the Mario tennis and golf games are really interesting because they are like RPGs instead of like direct ports or reworkings of like the Nintendo 64 ones. They're like these little RPG games that you play, and they're really a lot of fun. Mario Tennis takes everything you love about the Mario Sports Series games, and it's really fun on the go. It works really well. It plays, and the presentation is fantastic. It plays super well. A lot of games that you don't think should work on the Game Boy Color work exceptionally well, and Mario Tennis is no exception. And number 8 is going to be Mario Golf, like I just mentioned before. Again, another little like RPG game that you play on the Game Boy Color. Has fantastic graphics. I love when you have just like the character himself, when you're stepping up to actually hit the ball, you have the little meter, you've got your guy there, and when you hit the ball, it actually goes into like a map mode, so you see like the top down. It's really innovative. It's really fresh. Again, I love these old sports games. I thought they were really peak back in the day. They were really novel and interesting, and they work exceptionally well on the go. So that's going to be number 8. Number 7 is going to be Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, another sport game here, but this one is really unique. So unlike the 3D counterparts here, like I have Pro Skater 2 on one of my top 10 lists, but this one is very unique because it is a side-scrolling version of Tony Hawk's. It's really honestly nothing like the original game. It's very unique. They made these levels from scratch. You still have some of the staples. You have like the tapes and the letters and everything, but it's really, really fun. The fact that you have a side-scrolling Tony Hawk game adds a different layer to this game instead of doing the 3D environments. It changes the way that you play it, and it works super well. I can't believe this game was able to be made in the first place, and that they were able to conceive of such a good idea to port it over to the Game Boy Color. So it's going to be sitting here at number 7. Number 6 is going to be Mario Bros. Deluxe, which is not only like a port of the original game, but also includes the lost levels. It has like red coin challenges and some mini games as well. This is a really cool package of Mario games, and it looks fantastic. Again, this is one of those instances of it's amazing that it plays as well as it does on the Game Boy Color, because this is an old handheld system, but this is a huge step up from the original Game Boy, and the Mario games look and play so well. This is probably the best place that you can play the original Mario games up to this point. This was the best place to play all of them in one place. So number 5 is going to be Metal Gear Solid. Now, I confess that I haven't played most of the Metal Gear Solid games. That's one of my few things as a gamer that I really need to do, especially with like I have a bunch of the copies. Like I had Twin Snakes on the GameCube at one point. I remember watching my brother play through that one a lot. That one was fantastic. I've had copies of Metal Gear Solid. At one point, I had Metal Gear Solid 4 on the PlayStation 3. I just wasn't good enough back in the day when I first tried to play those games, and so I never really got into them. I know they'd be for me now, and I know that because I've played through Metal Gear Solid on the Game Boy Color, and it is a phenomenal experience. It's so much fun. packs in a ton of lore. The gameplay is really tight. The sneaking around is super fun. I love playing the game trying to go for full-on sneak. I mean, I know that's the point anyway, but I like to not be discovered a single time. Metal Gear Solid works exceptionally well on the Game Boy Color, and it makes me want to go and play these other Metal Gear games. I recently picked up Metal Gear Solid again. I started playing it through on my emulator, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, so I think I'll probably finally get into the series, but it works super well on the go with the Game Boy Color version here. Number 4 is going to be Wario Land 3. This was kind of a big step up for the series. It not only made it much bigger and better in almost every single way, but also introduced more of the Metroidvania style things. It's almost like a puzzle game more than it is like an action platformer, but it kind of melds all of those things together in a beautiful package. I think Wario Land 2 might be my preferred one if you're counting the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, but it's a toss-up because Wario Land 3 gives a ton of extra content. I think the Wario Land series is just fabulous altogether, but Wario Land 3 sets itself apart as being this really big step up, being this really massive game for such a small console. So that's going to be sitting here at number 4. Number 3 is going to be Shantae. These games are so cool. I love that we have access to so many of them on the Nintendo Switch now. I'm really happy they had the original one because for a long time this was one that was like a really expensive original copy that you couldn't get anywhere, so it was kind of just lost to time. And now that we have it on readily available on these new consoles, it's really a fantastic thing. I really love the Shantae series. It's an action platformer, very Metroidvania-esque. You have the ability to transform into different animals, which gives you a different kind of gameplay dynamic. These games are really fun. They're really smart in their humor. They're very witty. I really love the Shantae games, and this is a great start for the series. Number 2 is going to be Pokemon Crystal. Now, I love the second generation. Totodile is my favorite Pokemon of all time, so I'm a sucker for this game, and it's just another fantastic Pokemon game. I believe that Pokemon was either number 3 or 2 on my Game Boy list here. I think Pokemon Yellow is number 3, if I'm not mistaken. I love the Pokemon series. Their old Pokemon games especially are just so much fun. All the way up until Emerald, I had a really great time playing these games, and then I kind of fell off for a while, but then I jumped back in later on. But Crystal was so much fun. It expanded the Johto region, made it really fun to revisit if you'd played through Gold and Silver. I think Crystal is the best version of all those games, but really you could just pick any of the 3 and have a phenomenal time. But number 1 is going to be Zelda Oracle of Ages or Oracle of Seasons. Since I know these are 2 very different games, they often get grouped together, but I didn't want to put them at number 1 and number 2 since I love them so much. So it's just pick your poison. I'm going to do one per franchise here. You can say if you like Seasons better or Ages better. Pick your pick here and have it at number 1. My particular pick out of Ages and Seasons is Seasons. I had a lot more fun with that one. I thought it was a really interesting mechanic going between the 4 seasons. Just because the Ages and going back and forth between times has been done in the Zelda series before, and I've really enjoyed it. I just think the season mechanic is really cool. But either way you go, it has phenomenal story, great combat, great items, phenomenal dungeons, of course. The Game Boy Color era of Zelda games was phenomenal. You still have Link's Awakening as one of the pinnacle of the entire franchise, and definitely the best mobile version that we've ever gotten. I guess that's maybe debatable if you've got stuff like Link Between Worlds, but man, if they didn't really nail the formula with Link's Awakening and the Oracle games. So I really love them here, and that's why they're sitting at number 1. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below if I missed any of your favorite games in the Game Boy Color. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.